Hey Explorers, and welcome back to Pip Explores. After our first tent considerations video, I'm coming back with 4 more considerations. So we're talking about buying a tent for the first time, or maybe just buying a new tent. What should you think about? And if you haven't watched part 1, check that out. And this is part 2, so we're just going over some more things to think about. There are a ton of things to think about. I could have a whole series on things to think about when buying a tent. I'm not going to do that, but I could. So the first thing we're going to talk about is a good rain fly. And I have a strong opinion about this. If you're buying a tent, it should have a rain fly that goes all the way to the ground. None of that like top hat bullshit, okay? We want a rain fly that completely covers the tent. Now this gives more weight, people get cranky about it. The other ones seem to work fine, but as somebody who has been to camp or camping enough times with one of those tents and had the top hat come off, because that's not very secure, trust me, you want a full rain fly. You're going to end up being drier. You don't have to worry about it coming off in the middle of the night, and it's a lot more secure. And at the end of the day, I want to be dry in my tent. I'm not about to have a massive thunderstorm come in, rip my rain fly off, and then just be soaking wet. No thank you, goodbye. Another thing that is like kind of a point of contention for some people is whether or not you should buy a tent footprint, or should you use a piece of plastic, or should you use a tarp. So if you don't know what this is, a tent footprint is basically a piece of tent fabric that you put underneath your tent. It's slightly smaller than the bottom of your tent so that it doesn't get like waterlogged and make your whole sleeping setup soaking wet. But it's there primarily to protect the bottom of your tent from damage, rocks, anything like outdoorsy. So that small piece takes the brunt, so your big expensive tent kind of is safer. I don't think you need one unless you're a backpacker. Again, personal opinion, I have one for my backpacking tent, but all of the tents that I use like car camping or like on casual trips that aren't gonna get that beat up, I don't have them. You can hate that. You can get one. I told you why you get them. If you want to have one tent last you for your whole life, invest in a footprint. You'll have to go through a few of those, but like I think they're a waste of money unless you plan on camping like every day for 8 months. If you're doing that, please get a footprint because, again, your tent's going to take all of that beating directly to its floor instead of having that extra protective layer to take it. It's easier to replace the protective extra layer because you can just buy a new one than buying a new $300 tent. So that's up to you. I gave you my opinion. People are going to yell at me in the comments. It's fine. Another thing you really actually have to consider is what size tent do you buy? So if you've never looked at tents before, usually their size is like, this is a 1-person tent or this is a 6-person tent. So what does that mean? So when they're determining like their sizes, they're like, okay, how many adult people with this average like size can we fit next to each other in the tent? That's great if you're going on a school camping trip and all your stuff is staying in the car and you can pack in like sardines because you only have one tent. But in a practical situation, you probably want to have like your pants in your tent, especially if you're backpacking and the only place for your pants to go is either outside on the ground or in your tent. So a good rule of thumb is that a person's stuff takes up like a person, unless you're backpacking, in which case, let's say you and your partner are backpacking, okay? Go with me here. So you and your partner are backpacking and you want to share a tent at night. What size tent should you buy? You should get a 3-person tent because since you're backpacking, first of all, you inherently have less stuff. And second of all, you want something lighter weight, so that would work for you. If you're going by yourself backpacking, get a 2-person tent. Or get a 1-person tent and deal with it. Do what you want. But keep in mind when they say this is a 1-person tent, that's your body. If you have the ability to go to an outdoor store and physically get into a tent you're considering buying, maybe with your backpack or whatever you usually take when you're camping, could be a good idea. Another thing you have to be cognizant of is if you're really tall, some tents might not be made to fit somebody your size. The dimensions are usually online. Check those out. But if you're like professional basketball player height, that might be something you need to think about when buying a tent. All right, and I said we were going to talk about 4 things, but I only have 3 because I can't count. But the third thing we're talking about is what season of tent to buy. Now, typically there are 3 types of tents. You can get a 2 season, a 3 season, or a 4 season. Yes, I know there are more specifics and like there are little in-betweeners and stuff like that. This is for beginners and basics. We're not going into that. So a 2 season tent is great if you live somewhere where it's warm and temperate and beautiful and you're only camping in that place, you know, where it's nice and warm and dry. Those are your 2 season people. 3 season is everybody who lives where I live and camps where I camp. 3 season tents mean that they're good from spring to fall. So spring, summer, fall. Not for winter. They're for those middle season where it's gonna drop a little bit. You're gonna get a chill, but it's not gonna be snowing. And that's an important distinction. 3 season tents often have a lot of mesh as well as a rain fly to allow for more ventilation, because if it's 98 degrees out in the summer, you want the ventilation, but it also gives you the option to cut those ventilation sources off so that when it starts to get chillier, you can stay warm. Now up here in the 4 season, these are our badass winter campers. These people are extremely tough and they don't care that it's snowing and negative 58 degrees outside. They're camping. Not that I haven't done that. But anyway, a 4 season tent is great for people who are planning on camping in the winter in harsher conditions, because again, these tents are going to have thicker walls. They're going to help insulate your body heat a little bit better. Usually they're smaller because the bigger the tent is, the more like air your body has to heat up, and they're always going to be more expensive. Don't get a 4 season tent unless you actually need a 4 season tent. Granted, you could get away with using a 4 season tent in 98 degree weather like a 2 season tent. It just might not be the best bang for your buck. So those are 3 more, even though I said at the beginning 4. Don't know why. I can't count. Tent considerations, things to think about, things that I have strong opinions about. If you have any other questions about tents or camping, let me know in the comments below. If you haven't already, be sure to hit that subscribe button. We are on Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter, all at Piff Explores. Don't forget to check out our website, piffexplores.com, and we will see you next week. Bye, guys.